There we go. Welcome, everybody. My name is Adolfo Guzman-Lopez, and welcome to everybody on Facebook. Let people know that this is happening. So maybe tag some of your friends. I'm going to be talking to Rabbi Scott Fox, the new rabbi at Temple Israel. Thank you, Rabbi, for letting me cut in line in front of everybody else to talk to you.
I was wondering what was going on when it was the talk and cut with the holding something in conversation. Yeah, it was. It's truly, Adolfo, truly a pleasure to get to join together this evening and just have a conversation, connect with one another. I'm an open book, so I'm happy to share and looking forward to sharing anything that you might be wondering about.
Well, and I almost forgot my yarmulke. No.
Fantastic.
To me, the yarmulke is a reminder of when I engage in things that are sacred. Is that one definition? Why do we wear the yarmulke?
So it's interesting. There's different traditions about wearing a yarmulke, and it's actually come in and out of Jewish practice throughout time. I, for a long time, did not wear a yarmulke outside of the sanctuary. I would put it on anytime I had a specifically holy moment. And I've experimented with wearing it at other times. And there's actually a practice, there's an understanding in Jewish texts of na'aseh v'nishma, that some things we first understand before we do, we'll go through and we'll learn and we'll say, this makes so much sense, I'm gonna do this practice. But there is also in our tradition a little bit of a different way of approaching some rituals. And that is na'aseh v'nishma, doing and then gathering an understanding for it. And that's been my approach to the kippah. I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna try it. We'll see what happens. And it made me think very differently about who I am. When I walk into a store, I have not a lot of features that might distinguish me outside of being a white male. And all of a sudden, I'm a Jewish person, and I think differently. Sometimes with a little bit of concern, often with a lot of sense of purpose of representing the community that we have. And there's a beautiful thing that happens too, which is every once in a long while, I'll be at a music shop. Well, I guess this dates a little bit, but when I was going to music shops and flipping through CDs or albums, or I'll be at the grocery store, every once in a while, someone will come up to me and they'll say, hi, I just wanted to say hello. I'm Jewish. Or I have a relative that's Jewish, and it's such a beautiful thing for me to see the kippah. Or I'm new to this town. Can you tell me where a good place is to get bagels? And it's been this beautiful way of tying myself to other people in our community. Definitely a na'aseh v'nishma moment. A way of not just taking those holy times that we have when we walk into a sanctuary or maybe offer a blessing, but bringing it to every walk of life. And so I have begun to wear the kippah more and more and more, to the point where most days I leave it on.
Following this thread, a similar feeling, well, I don't know if similar, but a feeling has, when I go on my walks, I look at doorposts. And I look and whenever I see a mezuzah, it does warm my heart, not only because I know it's a Jewish house, but because I know the family took the time to put up the mezuzah, but because now I know what text is in there. I know that the Shema is in there. And that really warms my heart when I see a mezuzah.
I think it's so beautiful that we've taken this text, we're such a textually based people, and said, what do we want to do? First of all, it's a little puzzling because the text says, take this and put it on the doorpost of your house. What in the world does that mean, right? But what we've done is we've taken these words and we've literally affixed them to the doorposts of our houses and placed them with a little bit of a lean in. I could tell a story about that if you want, but there's a lean into the house, pointing in. The words of the Shema continue. They offer the words v'ahavta. Shema and Ve'ahavta, these two instructions, two invitations for us of what we might do when we walk into a Jewish home, not just indicating to other people what kind of a place that is, but a reminder of what kind of place we can make it. And so we look in and we say, remember, one of the most profound things that we can do for another human being is to listen, to truly be a loving and kind and compassionate person for them. And ve'ahavta, may we find in that act of listening, of truly being there for another person, a great deal of love for them.
Wow, those are
anyway,
beautiful.
I know that wasn't a question, but yeah.
I know, no, those are beautiful teachings, and I didn't have either of those in my list of questions. It was just naturally.
So I'm happy to derail us if you know.
So let's get into you. You've been with us at Temple Israel Long Beach for 2 months now. How are you feeling? How are you settling into it all?
So there's been an interesting couple of parts. Part of it has been a little bit, to be honest, a little quite like difficult, but a little bit frustrating in that I want to meet everyone. I want to share this time and space with everyone, not just the beautiful programs that we get to share, but that moment afterward when someone comes up to me and says, you know, Rabbi, I grew up at this temple and this community means so much to me. Right there in that space right here, I was married. I had my bar mitzvah. I had my baby was welcomed into our community. That this space is that important to me. I'm missing that. I will say that in addition to that, it's been, you know, I've thought about this. It's a little bit like a long distance relationship in some ways, that we've gotten to know each other kind of over the phone, over Zoom, over on a very deep level right away. Because rather than having all of these other modes of connecting, we've needed to use this very deep and direct interpersonal way of building relationships with one another and connecting. So I've actually found over the past maybe 2 weeks, something like that, that my language has changed. And as I've joined the community, I've said, instead of, you know, what kind of a place is Temple Israel like, or tell me about your community, that the language has started to change to what a joy that we get to celebrate this holiday together in our community. What a beautiful place for all of us. And so the past couple months have been difficult, and I'm happy, by the way, to go into some of the unique challenges of beginning a new pulpit in the middle of COVID. But in terms of my personal experience, I've been missing those moments when neither of us planned that time, but we've had it together. And I've been actually somewhat grateful for the way that means that I've been able to set intentional moments together with members of the community.
Well, and I'm asking how you're doing because, okay, so you're moved from Indiana, right?
Indiana, yep.
Right, and you're moved from Indiana, and you knew the pandemic was happening. There's nothing you can change about that. You move halfway across the country. Your brother is tragically killed. I'm wondering, Rabbi, what are you tapping into to balance, understand, feel all of these things that have been happening to you?
So I will say that my loss has weighed on me very heavily. It's not unusual in the rabbinate to have moments like this. I'm happy to share, and I will share. You may need to remind me about my experience with my brother, but I'll just share a moment in my last pulpit when I went from a very intense funeral to a conversation with a wedding couple. And I've been used to taking moments where I just stop, I meditate, I reflect. every once in a while, I'll need to call someone and just say, I'm just feeling this. Can you just hear me for a little bit? That moment, I was driving away from the funeral and I had to pull off onto the side of the road and I just cried. And let myself be in that moment. And then continued on and sat with the wedding couple, and it was even an affirming moment in this line of work, that we are with people in these profound moments of loss and celebration. It's very different for myself, and so I've spent a lot of time trying to let myself remember my brother, putting up pictures of him. We uncovered one of his computers, and he did software design. In fact, he designed software for synagogues. When he was in high school, he was that kid that our local synagogue hired to make the website. And he sat down with the associate rabbi at the time. The associate rabbi said, is there some way that we could organize our caring community? Like, I know we're talking about doing website stuff. Like, could we? And he dreamed up this software called Hinenu that I don't know the number, but I would say 100, 200 synagogues across the country were using at that time. And so we when we were going through his things, we found one of his computers, and I've set a space aside with his desk and his computer. And at times, and I don't know whether I necessarily believe that this is really, that he is hearing or exactly where this goes, but what I'll do sometimes is I'll go over and I'll just write a letter to him on his computer, on his desk. And I don't know whether it's that it brings out the memories that are so powerful, or whether it's a moment just to connect with this space that he used quite a lot. But it's really powerful for me to feel like I can be with him a little bit in those moments. Things like that have been very healing for me. And so I've used things like that to help me process this. There are still moments, anytime I use the word mark in a sentence, even as a verb, all of a sudden his memory comes flooding back. And it's actually a gift in many ways. I don't want him to go away. And so I've tried to kind of bring him into my life. You asked also just about general self-care. I've picked up surfing again.
Oh, good for you. Look at you.
I'm back in the water.
Yeah.
I got an old beat up surfboard that I didn't have to worry about getting dings on in my kind of coming back to learning how to ride waves.
Oh, where are we gonna see you? Huntington, Malibu? Where are we gonna see you?
So I've got a spot now, and I understand it's called Anderson's. If you go down on PCH and you're heading right around Sunset Beach, not quite like the very first turn at Sunset Beach, there's a couple of great breaks right there.
Where the water tower apartment is?
Exactly. Okay. I've had to get used to different kinds of waves, because these waves are much more rideable, but then at the same time they're much quicker. So it's been a real process of learning how to get back on the waves and go quickly. The waves are I won't pass judgment, but I'm enjoying the waves a lot. But it's been a real learning process. So that's been a real gift for self-care as well.
My 16-year-old son is going to love hearing this because he's been surfing for a couple of years, and we went to Law Street, my old haunt in Pacific Beach in San Diego a week ago, and then he went to Trestle. He's been going to Trestles and all that.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I have to say that my old spot is D Street, right off of Moonlight Beach in Encinitas. Spent many an afternoon and evening there, and I had surf PE with my high school as well. We'd go over to La Jolla, but that was just
all right. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Rabbi Fox, if we were in synagogue, we'd be seeing a lot of your partner and your child. So tell us about them, and introduce us to them.
Absolutely. So Dory is an environmental organizer. We actually met at a program just north of here, up in Simi Valley at the Brandeis Bardeen Institute. We both went on this program that's kind of like camp for college students, called the Brandeis Collegiate Institute, and we met at that program. We've been together for a number of years, and we've kind of journeyed together. Dory has a deep passion for making our world a better place. She feels so deeply connected to the environment. I genuinely think that she is more comfortable outside in the woods than in any building. And also, when I have Jewish questions, I will go to Dory. She is very deeply knowledgeable.
Oh, what a gift! That's great.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We also we'll practice our Hebrew, speaking Hebrew together. So that's another fun thing that we do together. I want to let her speak for herself, so I will share just that. I know that she is thrilled to be meeting members of the community and looking forward to connecting even further. Adi, our little one, I meet every day anew. There's something new that Adi does every single day. So I'll tell just a little story. That the other day, I was sitting outside with Adi, and Adi reached for my water bottle. So I took the cap, I poured a little bit of water into the cap, and I handed it over to Adi. And Adi, instead of taking a drink, started blowing bubbles.
How old is Adi?
Adi is 14 months. So
oh my God.
Just a little one. And so we, and then Adi brought the cap over to me. And so I blew bubbles a little bit. And then Adi grabbed it and brought it back and blew bubbles. And we started going back and forth. And then I realized that Adi was doing a rhythm. So then I started blowing bubbles in a rhythm back to Adi. And we kind of jammed with a cup of water. So it's been a real joy it's been a discovery of learning this child, of meeting this child each and every day. That is new. My kid now has rhythm.
Rabbi, one of the things I noticed when you, in your emails and even your listing here, your pronouns, you list your pronouns, which is not new to a lot of people, sure, but it is new to a lot of people. So can you talk about why you do that, and also how that has affected your parenting? Absolutely.
Yeah. So there are members of our community who identify in a way and have discovered themselves to be perhaps differently than the way that they may have been assigned at birth. So I'll share it in this way. That there might be somebody who was born with a male body, and throughout the process of their life, they felt like something wasn't quite right. Something was missing. And they've discovered that the truth is they actually identify as a woman, not as a man, or perhaps identify as neither a man or a woman. It is my hope that every single person finds a doorway into our Jewish community. And so I have been inspired from members of our community. Actually, so often our best ideas come from our teens. So Nifty, our high school youth group across the country, has decided to place pronouns with all of their Zoom names. I should mention also that they have for quite some time been including this as well in name tags and things along those lines. The hope being that every member of our community can feel completely and fully welcomed, that there's no concern about being identified differently than the way that they identify themselves. And so the hope is that we welcome them with those pronouns. I'm hearing a little bit of a question underneath that as well, which is that Dory and I have decided to bring up our child with a different set of pronouns. So rather than offering the pronouns he, or he, him, or his, or she, her, or hers, we have decided to try to find something more expansive. And the hope is that as our child grows up, that they can receive all of the blessings that we offer to a young boy, a young girl, that there is for so many of us the hope that our children will be able to fully express and fully recognize who they are, and that we might not accidentally bring them into who they are, but rather that we discover for them who they are, that we create the space for them to tell us, I love playing with trucks, or I want to wear a dress, or I you know what, I really don't like blue pants, whatever it might be, and that even the language that we share, my hope is that is a way of creating an even more broad space and more open space for the members of our community. And so as we thought for our child about how we wanted to welcome Adi into the world, we chose the pronoun they, in the hopes that as people meet Adi, that they will look at Adi and say, what a beautiful baby, what a strong child. And that we can all celebrate this young person as they grow up, and let them discover how they want to be in the world.
These words you use of open doorway are so strong and remind me of that tent in open on all sides. That is part of our biblical tradition, and that's what I found at Temple Israel. I mean, now I'll share a little bit of myself. I was born in Mexico, grew up in Tijuana and San Diego, in National City, but I went to school in Pacific Beach, which you probably know.
No, well.
And my wife and I met in college. Her family is both parents grew up in Queens. On one side from Hungary and lost a lot of family members in the Holocaust. On the other side, mostly been here in the United States, Lower East Side, New York, for over 100 years, right? And so we fell in love, and but for a long time, I mean, Judaism was a very, a very difficult thing for me to understand until we took a Pathways to Judaism class in San Diego, in San Diego County. It was a very eye-opening class. As a matter of fact, we went to several temples, and I think we went to one in Encinitas. We rotated around, and so that opened my eyes a lot. And then coming to Temple Israel, and especially with Rabbi Stephen Moskowitz, who was so open and so welcoming. The key thing for me was probably right around 2011. My daughter was about 1 year old, and there was a lot happening in our household. My daughter was 1 year old. Obviously, the mother is taking care of, the newborn. My son was 6 years old. And, I'm having to help out a lot and that sort of thing. And there was Torah study on Saturday mornings. And I thought to myself, wow, an hour and a half just like listening to teaching and asking questions and being away from the house. so I
particular part of that I'm just not gonna dwell too much on it, but there's a particular part that I noticed was a little, yeah, anyway.
so I told Lisa, hey, honey, I'm going to Torah study. Oh, really? You're going to Torah study? Wow. But in all seriousness, you know, it was tough in the beginning. It was so daunting and intimidating to have the text in front of you, the actual Hebrew and the English just confronting you. It was so heavy at first. But then that Torah study community at Temple Israel it has just been so beautiful. And Rabbi Moskowitz as a teacher has been so beautiful. And so for me, I've had epiphanies in there, and I'll just share one. And we just had Parsha Shoftim, right? This Parsha where it, you know, the Torah talks about not only justice shall you pursue, but a little bit after that talks about what a community is to do when a person has been killed, the body's been found, and the community cannot find the person responsible for that killing. The ritual, if I remember correctly, is to take a young calf, and slaughter it in a wadi, in a dry creek. So for us, looking at this ritual 2,500 years later may seem, you know, really strange, right? But the epiphany for me was that my mother's father was killed violently in rural Mexico when she was 3 years old. And the killer was never found. The community did not atone. And my mother's family was thrown into a tailspin. And the epiphany in that room with Rabbi Moskowitz and everybody else, the epiphany is that I saw my grandfather. I saw my grandfather laying on the ground, and I was wondering whether he died looking up, looking down. The soil in Guanajuato where he was killed is a very rich soil. So after that, it was just, I wanted more.
You know, there's a literary theory that talks about how we read a book, and throughout the book, we see these changes in the character, and talks about how is it that the characters are able to change throughout the book? How is it that we're able to read these profound differences in a character that is clearly consistent from the beginning to the end? And this theory takes a look at that and turns it around. Instead of looking at the character, instead of looking at the author, it looks instead at the reader and says, no, the reader is changing as we read this story. The reader is understanding this character differently, and that we, as we change in our lives, are marking our changes with the changes that we see in the characters. I'm hearing you say that these profound moments in your life have been illustrated, and you've had the opportunity to reflect and understand them in a new way, in a deeper way, or perhaps just in a different light, through the stories of this tradition, that you have been able to see these moments of your life in the light of these sacred texts that have inspired so many before us as well.
Yet members of that Torah study, when I asked them, oh, why aren't you going anymore? Oh, it's the same thing every year.
Yeah, nope. It never ceases to amaze me. That people will ask, like, sometimes, like, how do you think of something to say for the Torah portion each week? Every time I go to the Torah portion, there is something completely different, completely new. Yeah, I'm with you. Truly, no judgment. That we find many ways to be inspired in our lives, and that for some of us that's Torah study. For some of us that's other ways of learning and exploring. For me, I find so much each and every time I open those pages.
So let's move on to let's talk a bit about you've had an opportunity to talk to quite a few people, know how more or less how Temple Israel runs. You've interacted with the board, and you work closely with the lay leadership, with Kenter Haas, Sharon Brown, and everybody. So can you start talking about some of the priorities that you're either starting to think about or already set down for yourself for what you want to do as the rabbi of the Temple Israel community?
So I do need to say that I still am in an information gathering mode. That we've had meet and greets, and that the meet and greets have actually allowed me to connect with about a fifth of the Temple Israel community, which is incredible to me. That I've been able to really connect with so many members of our community. I still have so many members of the community still to connect with, and so I'm still learning and drawing in the different things that inspire this community. The next steps for me are largely, well, we have a whole new platform to think about in terms of how to connect as a community. And so there's a lot of my goals right now are thinking about how do we both at the same time find ways to connect and give a sense of the normal, give a sense of what is familiar, and use this new platform that allows us to connect in a totally different way. And so a lot of my hopes and thoughts are to innovate, to grow. I'll give an example. The ritual committee was already starting to do this, the Ritual Practices Committee, but I just connected with Mark Dressner about a very specific group of synagogues for the Ritual Practices Committee to take a look to see what kinds of practices they have, what kinds of innovations they might bring to our community. The other part of that is slowly bringing in some of these innovations to our ritual practices and to the practices of our community. I believe that a synagogue needs to create experiences that are CIT. These experiences as a community, they need to be experiences of connection. We need to feel connected to one another, connected to our tradition, and connected more deeply to ourselves. Our experiences need to have integrity. They need to be something that is real, something that's authentic, something that genuinely allows us to think more deeply. And our experiences need to have some element of transformation. They need to transform us in a way. We need to be different somehow, even if it's just a tiny little bit afterwards. And so my hope, my goal for this community is to start innovating, start growing, quite simply because we have to right now. We are in a spot where we have a whole new mode of relating to one another, so that we can have these experiences. And so as I vision with the community, and again, it is simply not my style, it is not me to walk into a community and say, we are going to do X, Y, and Z. Rather, I want to sit together and say, what are we passionate about? What kinds of things do we need to do as a community? What kinds of ways do we need to create meaningful experiences? What are our needs? And what are the ways that we want those to happen? But if you were to then just say, okay, all right, but Rabbi, like, what is your vision? My vision is that we need experiences of CIT. We need to feel connected. We need experiences that have integrity, and we need to be transformed by them. And I am thrilled to be doing this work in partnership with the members of the community.
Have you seen this book yet, The Family Mishpacha? No?
I have not. Please tell me.
So back in 2013, when the sanctuary was opened, Rabbi Moskowitz, the leadership of Temple Israel, organized a series of events to inaugurate the new structure, the new building, and the beautiful space. And Rabbi Moskowitz knew that I was interested in poetry. So he said, hey, Adolfo, why don't you put something together? And I said, yeah, let's commission a poet to write a poem for this, this rededication. And that's what we did. And Patty Seaburn, the professor at Cal State Long Beach, who is very involved in their synagogue in Orange County, wrote a beautiful poem. And we may have run out of copies, but we'll make sure to get you one. But that to me was that experience that you're talking about, because not only did Patty write a poem that was about Temple Israel and Long Beach and religious rituals, but also secular Long Beach. And we held an event in the synagogue where she read it. She came and read the poem, and it was a beautiful experience. And it allowed me to and then we had the other component that the other committee members helped with, was that we went to the different components of Temple Israel and had them submit lines that we gathered together into a poem, a collective poem. Oh. And so I got to go to Sisterhood and Torah Center and the men's group and lots of others. So that I totally hear you. That's it.
This is our community. We are a collection of people, of voices, and so yeah. Anyway, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
Rabbi, talk a bit about. I love the interaction between you and Cantor Haas, and you work so well together. Talk about the differences in your roles. What does a rabbi do? What does a cantor do? How do you complement each other? How do you not step on each other's toes?
Sure. So I have actually been blessed to work with a really amazing collection of clergy partners throughout my career. And when I was in school, the truth is that a lot of the schooling, at least for the first two, as you get to 3 years, it starts shifting away. We both rabbis and cantors go to seminary for 5 years. We spend a lot of time together. We spend a lot of time learning together and having conversations together and studying together. And then what happens is we end up splitting off and focusing in different ways. I use the term clergy very deliberately, in that I see it really as a team. I, again, in the past have had the opportunity to work with amazing rabbis and cantors in that real mode of teamwork. So yes, I am somewhat musical. So I've
somewhat musical. Wait a second. You studied jazz guitar and played so many places. You're more than just musical.
I'll take the compliment, I guess. You, by the way, asked how I take care of myself. Sometimes that self-care is heading into that back room, taking my guitar and flipping on the amp. And sometimes it's jazz. Sometimes.
Is there some Black Sabbath in there too?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. That distortion pedal is my favorite one to step on. Yeah. What were we talking about?
Cantor,
Cantor, right. Yeah. So there are moments where I will play guitar. I can sing a little bit. I can hit I sing like a guitar player, so I can hit the notes, but doesn't sound as beautiful as a cantor. And the cantors that I have worked with, I've taught classes with. In the last pulpit that I was in, the cantor would sometimes give a sermon. That it is really a back and forth and a working together in that sense. Please.
Yeah, so on that note, briefly, so we can get into a couple of things.
Sure, I'm happy to expand on it, yeah.
The high holidays are around the corner. They're not going to be like the high holidays last year. So give us an overview of what they're gonna look like.
Absolutely. So we've really spent a lot of time talking about and thinking about how can we create an experience that will be meaningful. I mentioned a little bit earlier that we've been trying to think about how can we have an experience that gives that sense of normal, that moment of, I had the High Holy Days, I needed the High Holy Days this year. And at the same time, recognizing that it's not the same, it's not the same to not be able to sit in the pew and see that person that you saw last High Holy Days, and you remember that their daughter just got married, or sitting with a friend that you see during the year, but it's really Yom Kippur morning that you sit next to each other and listen to each other's stomachs grumble. Like these are the moments that we are having more difficulty bringing. But at the same time, there's an opportunity to think a little bit outside the box. So what we're doing is we are using a combination of pre-recorded services. In fact, on Friday, I just went through the High Holy Days. In the sanctuary, we recorded all the different readings, all the different experiences that we have during the ceremony, during the service, and we are pre-recording them so that we can produce them at a higher quality, and we're placing them together. We have a professional film editor putting the different pieces together, and then there are going to be live components to the service as well. For example, the sermon for each of them will be live, and other elements as well. But the hope is that'll be a moment of, I had the High Holy Days. I had the experience of Rosh Hashanah evening service. But at the same time, knowing that we have this opportunity to think outside of the box, we're providing workshops and forums in a little bit of a different mode this year. And so we're doing Zoom workshops, Zoom forums, and all different kinds of things like that are going to help us reflect and engage more deeply with the experience of the High Holy Days throughout the day, including on the end of the day on Rosh Hashanah, we're going to be combining a Havdalah and a Tashlich experience. And at the end of the day on Yom Kippur, we're going to be combining a Havdalah and a Ne'ilah experience. I'm trying to use this as an opportunity to provide what is meaningful and what can give us a sense of, again, the normal, and understanding that there is an opportunity to do things a little bit new this year as well.
I want to talk a little bit about Torah Center because it's just so important in Temple Israel. It's a part of Temple Israel that's been growing. My 16-year-old son started when he was in 3rd grade, had his bar mitzvah. My 9-year-old daughter is in Torah Center. But my question is about the parents. Because, the trend is that, a pattern is that those parents, and they're in between 30 and 40 years old, right, with kids, will become less involved or stop their involvement in Judaism, maybe even, in the temple, maybe even in Judaism after the bar mitzvah. What are your comments about that, and or a message to those parents?
So there are so many different ways into our Jewish community. And one of the most profound, one of the most powerful is through the opportunity to teach our young people, the opportunity for them to engage in the spectacular Torah Center that we have at Temple Israel. I think for the parents of our young people that this is really where there's an exciting opportunity. There are a handful of groups that kind of emerged at my last pulpit, and one of them, one of the members of the group actually just emailed we were just emailing back and forth together today. About some of the ideas that she has for the group. It's very lovingly called Life After 50. So by the way, if anyone is listening from the Indianapolis Hebrew congregation, this is a loving shout out.
I qualify.
Exactly. Yes. So this is a group that wanted to say, how can we explore, meaningful Jewish practice when we don't have that connection to the Torah Center, we don't have that different way of engaging. I will say that it's taken the form of a lot of different experiences. Some of them are trips overseas, learning experiences. We've had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun kind of bringing different age groups together. We had a 20s and 30s group that we brought together with the Life After 50 group. But the most important thing to me is an element of empowerment, of working with a group of people in the community who can find different ways to engage. So it's interesting. In the Jewish world, I think that we have in the past talked about our community in terms of age demographics. And there are definitely things that are unique to each age demographic within our community. But I think that there's actually maybe a different way to look at this. And this is that we all have different ways, different interests and different passions that drive us to connect with our Jewish identity. And so I would answer that in a very broad way, that this is an opportunity to work with the different members of our community to find that perhaps it's time to put together a group that jams on Wednesday nights. We drop off our kids and we take melodies that are meaningful in our service, and we do a jam session. And maybe there's another group where we need to. By the way, I guess I'm being a little selfish in mentioning these two. These are passions of mine. We need a group that gets out on the water, and that I feel more deeply connected to a greater sense of things when I am out waiting for the next break than any moment that I've had with all of the Hebrew liturgy in the world. And so maybe we need that, but I think that we need to start thinking in those modes. What are the different passions, different ways that we can be engaged? And perhaps it's not even after our kids are through the Torah Center program, but even before that we find a way to express our Judaism. And then, oh, by the way, when our kids then look to their Judaism, they can see, oh, it's not, there's so many different ways to express my Judaism. Maybe I can express my Judaism by surfing. Maybe I can put Dan Nichols on my iPad. I almost said iPod. None of our kids have iPods right now. For any of the kids who are listening, an iPod is an ancient relic from way back that currently functions as a paperweight. But on Spotify, you listen to Dan Nichols on Spotify. I'm dating myself. Anyway, that there are different ways that we can engage with our Jewish expression, and that I would hope that we could find that today.
The goal of Torah and mitzvahs is to become a better human being, right? I mean, that's how I look at it.
Absolutely. I didn't end up bringing it in last Saturday morning, but we took a look at the story or the commandment that's in this past week's Torah portion to chase away the mother bird if we're going to take the eggs. And by the way, there was one person in particular who had a very profound insight that has very specific implications for today. But I'm not going to get into that right now. But just somebody had a very profound insight Saturday morning. Anyway, there's a text that I love, and it's a text that we all know, but there's an element to it that I think that we don't often reflect on, and that is the story of Hillel and Shammai, and the person coming to them and saying, "Teach me the whole Torah while standing on one foot." Right? The story goes that somebody comes and says, "Teach me the whole Torah while standing on one foot," and Shammai, by contrast, of course, is already holding a stick and chases this person out of his school. Says, "That's a ridiculous request. Get out of here." Same person goes to Hillel. Says, "Teach me the whole Torah while standing on one foot." And we know this phrase, right? Hillel says, What is hateful to you, do not do to another. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and study it. Except nowhere in the 5 books of Moses does it say, what is hateful to you, do not do to another. It's not actually in the Torah text anywhere. Instead, there's different things that might inspire us to find compassion for other people. And what Hillel is doing in that moment is offering this student the opportunity to similarly see that sense of compassion. He is saying,
yeah, go ahead.
But I'll just say this. He is saying, this thing that you've asked me to do, I can't do it. You're asking something that is not a kind thing to do. And so what I'm going to do instead is try to teach you what is at the core of our tradition. And that is compassion. I am asking you, O student, to have compassion for me as a teacher and to learn that that is the core of our Torah. Compassion is the entirety of what it means to be a better human being, what it means to learn to be a Jewish person. And of course, the important thing is the details. Go and learn them.
Love it. So as we start wrapping up, do we have to wrap up by a particular time? I forgot.
Well, I think we have 7:30 as a wrap up, but you know,
we could go over.
We can be on Jewish Standard Time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. You know, as the father of a 16-year-old who's in 11th grade and is going to be going to college and going out into the world and going to be away from this very supportive Jewish environment and community, I think about the anti-Semitism and the anti-Zionism on college campuses. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about, for parents of teenagers, about that.
Absolutely. I have a very dear place in my heart for college campuses. I spent 2 years working at Cornell University with their 3,500 young Jewish students who were and are deeply passionate and very driven. There is a real concern as our young people make their way to a space that's not like any other. In fact, the shift from home to college is one of the biggest shifts that I think anyone takes in their life for those who move away and choose to go to college. And so there's a great deal of support that we need to offer our young people completely outside of the very real challenges and concerns that happen in our world more broadly. One of the things that I think I saw the most in our young people was not that they knew how to brush their teeth, they knew how to eat well, things like that, but there was such a shift. They were meeting new people, they were making new friends, and there was honestly a loneliness that they had. The more that we can provide a space for our young people to see their experience in the context of other people who have the same experience, the more we can do to allow our young people to connect on a deep level, not at a party, which is fine, but on a meaningful level. The better we serve our young people as they take those steps to college. I will say, for anyone who is looking at that next step of leaving home, of what college might look like. Now, this year college is looking considerably different than it may have looked in the past. But I want to encourage you to reach out. There are groups on campus, groups as a part of our communities that are there. And if Hillel is the right thing for you, absolutely, by all means. For some young people, you may decide that you've had an incredible experience at Temple Israel, and that actually you'd like to explore other things. Know that Hillel and that Temple Israel, that we are here for you. We're here with you. Go out and explore and enjoy. you asked specifically about some of the conversations, perhaps about BDS, boycott, divestment, and anti-Semitism on campus. I will say that there's not a kind of a home run thing that I can share. That each campus has different things that they're challenged by, and that, having just said that, don't feel compelled or obligated to connect with Hillel, that Hillel is a great resource for facing some of that discrimination that might exist on campus. And Hillels do have a voice and have been able to organize very well and have wonderful toolkits as well. I don't want to not do it justice by trying to give a short, pithy answer, because similar to Hillel, it's in the details of how those particular conversations take place. There are very real conversations that can happen. I've in the past brought together groups, and I will say that dialogue and conversation is a critical part of that. But I will simply try to provide resources, myself included.
One of the things that makes Temple Israel such a strong community is, in my experience with it, very deeply involved within the last, 8 years, is that Temple Israel is such a crossroads for learning and bringing thinkers through the series that we have. One of the most profound moments I had was the residency of Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who was with us for a few days, and I got to hear him. And then I read some of his books. Our library has some of his books, and that then turned me on to other books, and which then turned me on to some of the online lectures of, there's really a renaissance of thinking right now. I'm thinking of Rabbi Shai Held, who has some very good lectures about just one on the ger, on this definition that we have of, okay, yes, the stranger, but it's not really the stranger. It's a refugee, it's a asylum seeker, it's an immigrant, right? And then I'm also thinking about Rabbi David Ingber in New York. And I also go to Rabbi Jill Jacobs, a conservative rabbi who does a lot of great teaching about social action. I'm wondering what thinkers are out there that you want us to tap into. Either, we're living in these times, so maybe not necessarily bring them, but maybe connecting us to them. Who's inspiring you right now?
It's interesting. Parker Palmer is one of them. Parker Palmer wrote once that when he goes for inspiration, he often looks in other fields for that inspiration. People will often be surprised that he's sitting there reading a book on something totally unrelated to his field. So the people who are inspiring me right now, I am enthralled with a writer who seems to be able to just bring things right outside of the box. A writer named Jonathan Lethem, who I have just been so deeply moved by. I will say that my hope for people that we might look to, for people we might be inspired by at this time, I'm going to be honest. I've been reading a lot of Parker Palmer. I've been reading a lot of Abraham Joshua Heschel. These are the people that have been inspiring me right now. But I will say this, that there are, I think, alternative modes of getting inspired as well. And so I have a hope, this is a little bit of a shout out again, to a particular group that I think has explored Judaism in a very different way. And that is that we have incredible scholarship. The Robert Alter came up recently this past week, who is one of our former scholars who took our Torah text and looked at it from a literary perspective. We have brilliant feminist scholars. If you have not taken a look at the URJ's Women's Torah Commentary, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is profound. It is just chock full of ways to find the proper voice for each and every member of our community, voices that, that perhaps were not as prevalent in the past or not as well heard, and very much lifts up those voices. But I have to say that when you ask, where am I turning, or who do I invite us to take a look to? And this is a little bit unfair because I can't bring them out until we have a space to bring them out. There's a group up in Oakland called the Jewish Studio Project. And instead of looking at our texts from the perspective of an academic or an intellectual perspective, which I actually should say they have instead tried to find a different mode of expressing our Judaism. And so what they've done is they've created an open studio, a way of finding a different mode, a different language for these teachings that have inspired us for so many years. And so they instead try to find ways to express Judaism through art. So when you ask me, who do I have in my back pocket to bring out to Temple Israel? Yes, I look forward to bringing out so many of the great scholars that we have in our community and great teachers. I want to bring out somebody who can offer us an experience, someone who can let us delve into something that we just can't get from a book or we can't get from a lecture. And so my hope is to bring out groups like that can help us approach a little bit differently, perhaps offer a theater experience, a dance experience, whether we participate or simply observe it, that can get us outside of the mode a little bit, experience Judaism, perhaps in a new language.
So before I ask my final question on that note, do you want to increase support the social action component of Temple Israel? Because I have a cousin who's in her 20s through my wife, and that's what she and some of her Jewish friends connect with, is the social action. So is that a component you want to think about to have people connect with their Judaism through?
Absolutely. Yeah, I firmly believe that that all of this learning that we are doing is there to inspire us. In fact, the rabbis in the Midrash debated which was more important. Is learning more important or is action more important? And they came to the conclusion that, which is such a rabbinic response, well, it's learning but only because it leads to action. We need to be inspired to do this work. We need to be inspired to do the work of Tikkun Olam. And so, absolutely, I am thrilled. In fact, I had a conversation with the Social Action Committee. The weeks are a little blurred together. I think it was about a week or two ago, and I am excited to start growing the work that we do in our community. I've also should mention that I've started having some meetings with some of the clergy groups that do different elements of direct action in our community, social action and direct action. I think that if we are a community that is just learning and not able to do social action, not able to express the hurt and the need that is wider in our world, that we are not speaking to the depths of what our Judaism has to say. This past week on Friday night, I offered an iyun on the shooting of Jacob Blake, and I think that as we develop a relationship with one another, I hope to learn what is on the hearts of the community, but also to bring up and help express these things that are critical in our world right now. And wow, do we have a lot of things right now to be able to focus on. My hope in the future, and my vision for that particularly, is to create specific groups around particular issues. There can be the challenge of so many different things to make an impact on in our world. And so I will say again here and now, a bit of a shout out that if you have a particular issue, and Adolfo, I'm speaking now to anyone who is listening,
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
particular issue that you are passionate about. And I need to be clear that until after the holidays, I'm a little bit, there's quite a few things that I have on my plate. But after the holidays, I want to talk together. I want to sit and see if your particular passion is in a particular field. How can we start organizing as a community? Where can we find the voices and create groups within our community around, for example, women's rights, for example, the environment, different issues that are on our hearts, and different ways that we can be organized, be focused in our response, and express what all this Jewish learning, Jewish text, and Jewish experience is reminding us of. Don't forget that you were once slaves in Egypt. And the freedom that we feel is the freedom that we create, not just for ourselves, but for everyone in our world. Because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We have this sacred task of making this world into the place that we know that it can be. We just have to put our hands, we have to join our hands together to get there.
Wow. Rabbi Fox, one of the things I miss a lot about our sanctuary is that Jerusalem stone, you know, in that wall. And when the temple was renovated 7 years ago, I had not gone to Israel. We went to Israel as a family 2 years ago, and you know, we went to Jerusalem. We went to Lake Tiberias. I saw the tomb of Maimonides in Tiberias. We went to the Church of the Beatitudes. We went to Safat. My son had tefillin put on for the first time in Safat by a Chabad young man. We went to Kotel on a Friday night and heard that brotherly chanting, which, you know, I haven't converted. I'm you know, I've been fathered into Judaism, Rabbi.
Yeah. I haven't heard that term, by the way, father as opposed to grandfather. Yeah, that's beautiful.
so, you know, so when I came back, you know, that Jerusalem stone had so much more meaning to me. And in preparing for this interview, it's interesting how I'm having moments in the sanctuary, not being able to be in the sanctuary, because in preparing for this interview, then I thought, wait a second, if that Jerusalem stone is Israel, it's the desert. And then what is the ark? It's the brown color of the ark. It's Mount Sinai. And what is the opening of the ark? It's Shavuot every time that ark is open. So thank you for listening to
it's a gift.
my moment. And many of these moments help me be a better Mexican American, you know, a father. But my question is, what do you carry? You spent years in Israel. What do you carry with you? Can you leave us with that? What do you carry with you day in, day out about Israel?
Specifically about Israel. You know, I want to be thoughtful about this question. In the United States, it really can seem at times like we have a very diverse Jewish community. We have Orthodox, we have Reform, we have Conservative, Renewal, Reconstructionist. The list goes on. Our diversity really pales in comparison to the diversity of Jewish expressions and practices in Israel. And I think one way to look at that is to say that even though all of these different Jewish paths lead to different places, that there is a common Jewish place. And wow, what a gift to be in Israel and walk down the stones, down the road and walk on these stones that have been smoothed over by so many praying feet, that they shine. To be in Israel where the language can't help but speak philosophy and poetry because it draws from generations and generations. To be in Israel where the expression of Judaism has been seen in so many different ways, and it's possible to say, wow, even with all of these different ways of seeing Judaism, there is something unique and unifying to this people, and that is true. I'd instead like to invite us to see it the other way around. That we share this history, this tradition and heritage, this beautiful land, this beautiful Israel that has grown into so many different, spectacular, totally opposite, totally unique, and gorgeous expressions of our, yes, shared Judaism. And so for me, I think the Israel that I take around with me, not just the family that I have there, the friends that I have there. I literally today was talking with Dory about how we haven't been there in a while, and it would be so beautiful to be able to get back there. What I carry is the many different ways that we all express this gift of a tradition, this gift of texts, the different ways that we express whatever Judaism is. That it's this incredible source of inspiration. The part of Israel that I carry around with me is the many voices that are part of the people of Israel.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor to hear you, to have you answer my questions. If this was pre-COVID, I'd give you a big hug.
Same. I feel like it's so odd to not be giving hugs. Adolfo, truly a gift. Thank you. I realize that you have brought in questions that are both deep questions that I imagine some people may be wondering about, and things that are kind of more deep on our minds, and hopefully an opportunity to share just a little bit about who I am as well, not just in my role or my rabbinic capacity, but just my D Street connection that moment. It's truly a gift to get to build this community together, to get to share in this community. And by the way, Adolfo, I'm feeling your hug. I am feeling the hug from so many members of our community who have sent me these beautiful messages saying, welcome, we're so glad that you're here. If this is the way that we welcome everyone into our community, we're good. The Jewish community, we're good to go. I am thrilled to be joining this community. I am so overjoyed to receive your warm welcomes and your hugs. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. Hope you have a good night.
Same, Adolfo. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Bye.